This is what you can do about taking control of your own health, a podcast for people interested in exploring why we get sick, as well as in learning how to create bodies that are healthy, strong, fit, and disease resistant. I'm Sean McClendon, your host. I'm a certified personal trainer, author, and a health and fitness enthusiast. Thank you for joining me. Today, I want to talk about the question of whether or not long distance running is good for you or not, if it's healthy or not healthy. Um, but before we get into that, I want to let you know about my book, my featured book, which is what you can do about belly fat. So let me tell you about that here. So almost everybody has wondered at some point about how to get rid of belly fat. And most people, no matter what they do, can seem to get rid of it. So if that's you, make sure you check out my book, What You Can Do About Belly Fat. In it, you'll learn about why belly fat accumulates around the midsection, why fat accumulates around the midsection, the importance of paying attention to a special type of fat called visceral fat, and you'll receive key exercise, eating, and lifestyle strategies to help your body target belly fat based on my personal training experience, as well as my experience with reducing my own body fat to approximately 10%. So if you're ready to take steps to melt away your belly fat naturally and keep it away, this is your book. Make sure you look on Amazon and look at the description below this video. All right, so let's get into the topic. And again, what I want to talk about today is is distance running healthy? Is long distance running good for you, or is it bad for you? So why am I even talking about this? This is something that I have, excuse me, I have contemplated over time. I have a past in running distance. When I ran in track in high school, I ran middle distance and long distance. Middle distance being like the 800, long distance, the mile and the 2 mile. Did I like to do those? No, I didn't. I really preferred to do like 400, 800, but I won't even get into all that. It kind of didn't end up working out. But I did not like running long distance. I actually grew up running with my dad though. He would go on like these mile and a half runs, and he would take my brothers and I to run with him, and then we would come back home and do sit ups rather, and it was kind of good for setting like a exercise foundation for me in regard to exercising on my own is what I mean to say. Um, and so I did a little bit of distance coming up. Then when I was on my own, especially when my wife and I got married, we were doing 5Ks and stuff like that. And I actually still occasionally do those. However, over time, um, a couple of different things with me. I end up not being one to do as many long distance runs, especially like just running through my neighborhood every week, several times a week, logging lots of miles. And I also kind of set like a threshold, like above which I didn't really want to go. And I didn't really want to do any more than a 5K, 3.1 miles. And that's me. So I'll get into why I chose to do that. But before I do that and talk about my own personal um, reasons for not running as much long distance, I just kind of want to talk about it in general a little bit. So long distance running again, I think about that being like running like a mile, mainly a mile or more. A mile is pretty long, but especially long distance when you start getting into the 5Ks and above, 10Ks, 15Ks, half marathons, and I'm not even going to mention past that because that's really long. Um, so yeah, and I've done about a 10K. That's about the longest I've done. But after I did that personally, I was like, nah, I ain't doing that again. But anyway, just speaking in general, what are the pros and cons of running distance? So there's no doubt that distance running, being exercise in and of itself, does improve your cardio respiratory fitness. When I say cardiorespiratory, I mean heart and lungs, basically. It increases the efficiency of your heart, where your heart doesn't have to, your heart adapts to where it doesn't have to beat as much to pump blood through your body. It increases your lung capacity, helping you to use more of your lungs, breathe more deeply. It helps with weight loss. Running does help with weight loss. Now, of course, must note that it also depends on your diet too. But especially when you really start logging miles, like when you start getting to where you're running, equivalent to 45 minutes an hour a day every day, then you definitely are going to see weight loss. And it helps clear the mind. A lot of people run long distance because being out there in nature, I don't know about a treadmill or anything like that, but being out there in nature, running and all that type of thing helps one to clear their mind because they're more so focused on how their bodies feel and the world around them. Now, but what about possible cons to distance running? So one of the things, and it's a reason why a lot of people don't run distance, is the possible joint issues. So the thing about distance running is, and this is why there's so many different type of running shoes and tips on running and whatnot. You can get joint issues from it, especially if you do a lot of downhill running, because running is relatively high impact. You're constantly pounding the ground, especially if you're doing like pavement and whatnot versus like the dirt. You're constantly pounding the ground, and that stress is going, into your ankles, especially into your knees and whatnot. And a lot of people wear out their knees and wear out their hips from running. Not everybody. I don't want to make it like this is guaranteed because it's not. But especially from like downhill running or flat ground running on pavement. Okay. A little less from uphill running because uphill running causes you to have to use your quadriceps, the muscles in front of your thighs, a little more, and those are kind of like shock absorbers for your knees. So uphill running is actually a little bit better, and I'll try to talk about that a little bit more later. Um, Another thing is, what is the effect on the cardio system, the heart? Um, I read a study. It's a 2012 editorial by a man named James O'Keefe in a journal called Heart, and there was seen a minor increase in the possibility of atrial fibrillation or irregular heartbeat. I think atrial fibrillation is a type of irregular heartbeat where the heart doesn't quite um, beat normally. The heart rhythm is not normal, which can kind of be problematic. Um, and I think that comes from like whenever you exercise your heart and you're doing that stuff for such a long period of time, it not only works your leg muscles, it also works your heart muscle, and it causes that muscle to increase in size, and which is not necessarily a problem, but in some cases it could be, because there is a certain type of heart thickening that is associated with like heart failure and stuff like that. So I didn't do all of my like a lot of deep research into that, but however, there is like a slight increase for that type of effect on the heart from like ultra long distance running, logging many miles for months and months and and years and all that type of thing. And there's also a lot of buildup of oxidative stress, which is just another way of saying like, when you're running, you're just like whenever you drive your car and you create exhaust that your car has to get rid of, because that's kind of like the byproducts of gas combustion and all that type of stuff. So like you kind of do that same thing with your body, but it's a buildup of what's called oxidative stress, free radicals, in your body, and free radicals when they build up can be harmful to the body as long as you're like really recovering, eating well, and all of that type of thing. Then I think you can deal with a lot of it, but you just have to consider when you're doing a lot of long distance running, that's a lot of oxidative stress buildup. So that's a possible detriment kind of as well. Now, The thing is, and it's something that I've really wondered about and was thinking about before I decided to talk about this topic. How much running is harmful? Because running can be beneficial to your health for sure, but the question is there like a threshold after which running becomes actually harmful? And so, in my own studies, I've seen kind of differing opinions based on differing studies and whatnot. Um, One guy, his name is, and I hope I pronounce his name correctly, is Duck Chul Lee. He did a 2014 study in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, and he said in his study that to the least there is a threshold there. To the least there is a more is not better kind of point with exercise where you do more and it's not necessarily harming you, but it's not necessarily making you more healthy either. Now, I've seen other places where people say there is some sort of threshold that they don't know of explicitly, but where more does become more harmful. Um, but again, the jury seems to kind of be still out with that, and I mean, I've heard of people. I think the guy's name was Jim Fix, the long distance runner who was known to have, I think died in the midst of a run and whatnot. I don't know. Sometimes there are pre-existing conditions and things like that. Um, but I don't know the nature of his story and why that happened. And sorry, I don't know why that happened and all that kind of stuff. But the jury's still out on whether or not there's like a threshold where exercise actually starts to become harmful. But again, that could be due to like just somebody's personal, whatever their body state is, what somebody's diet is, how somebody recovers, all that type of stuff. The main thing that seems to be important is if you're somebody who runs and you like to run distance and whatnot, I'm not going to tell you whether or not you should do it. If that's what you like to do, then perhaps you should do it. But I think the most important thing is if you're going to run long distance, how are you taking care of yourself outside of that? Are you getting good rest? Are you eating good food, drinking plenty of water? Just kind of doing like comprehensive good health practices. And then the other thing that's very probably equally as important is just kind of like we got to listen to our bodies. How does stuff feel? If you're running a lot and then you actually do start to feel weird, you probably need to go to the doctor anyway to just get a checkup or whatever. But like remembering the art of listening to your body and seeing how your body feels is important. If it feels weird, you probably don't need to do it yourself. Or you probably need to, what I mean is, I'm not saying don't exercise altogether, but consider exercising differently. You know what I mean? And then also, like, it might make sense for you to go check with your doctor or physician, just to get a checkup, like a whole body checkup, especially if you're somebody who doesn't already exercise. So, so yeah, as far as whether distance running is healthy or not, the jury seems to be out on the study side of things as to whether or not it is. But you kind of see things on both sides. It's very healthy. Maybe it can be detrimental after a certain point. Maybe it's not. Now let me tell you about me. I don't do long distance running for a couple of main reasons. So first of all, and probably the biggest reason is because of the physiological effects. So, and I've seen this many, many years ago, and you've probably seen it by now, especially if you listen to this podcast. The comparison of the body of a marathon runner versus the body of a sprinter, both Olympic level athletes. You look at the body of a marathoner, small, thin, all that type of thing. You look at the body of a sprinter, muscular, lean, and all of that. So the reason for that is because, like, literally, whatever you do a whole lot of, your body adapts to fit that activity and to do that activity better, more efficiently. Our bodies are amazing with adaptation. So when you look at the body of a marathoner, his or her body has adapted to do that activity better. And usually that means a lot less fat because it's not efficient to carry a lot of fat for that long period of time. Also, very much reduced muscle content because it doesn't make sense for you to carry much muscle, um, when you're running as well. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of probably like musculature increase in the lower body, but even that at some point is probably going to need to be less. So people who run marathons and whatnot run a lot of miles, aren't necessarily going to be like the most muscular people. That might vary depending on whether or not they strength train outside of running. But then, because it's the sheer amount of energy that running is, long distance running is using, and the way that it uses the energy systems of the body, um, it's probably gonna put a cap on the kind of like muscle that you can like maintain. Now, sprinting or like shorter bursts of activity and whatnot are going to favor your body preserving more muscle, even building muscle for those type of activities. It is going to encourage your body to lose fat as well because you're going to need, especially if somebody does regular sprinting and whatnot, because your body is going to need to use not only the glucose in your blood for fuel, but it's going to need to, based on the way that type of activity uses energy, it's going to need to tap into those fat stores as well. So that's one of the reasons why I tend to opt for shorter distance running. I still do some longer distance, but not as my main thing. I do a lot of hill sprints are my bread and butter. I like to do rope jumping as well. But yeah, so that's one of the biggest reasons. I'm already kind of like prone to be more thin, and so I'm not trying to get more thin. And I also want to kind of have a lean, muscular physique, not necessarily like just a smaller frame. The other thing is my own personal concern about whether or not there is a threshold for detrimental effects. When I used to run track in high school, and especially when they had me doing like the mile and the 2 mile, I did not like the way I felt after those runs. And in particular, a lot of times the way that we had to do in training, we had to try to run in certain times, and then if you didn't run it in time, then you had to do it again, and the coach didn't really give you a lot of chance to rest. And just running for, 2, 3 miles, 4 miles, over and over and over and over again, like for me, I felt that it's not necessarily, even from a standpoint of improving health, maybe 10 minutes tops. That's kind of like my aim when it comes to like cardio, because it helps me to get in good shape. And then after that point, unless I'm kind of doing one of my few 5Ks or something like that, I start to kind of wonder, is this helpful? Is this even detrimental possibly? I just, have opted to kind of keep like a balance and opt more so for what I feel is more akin to a natural way of being, my opinion, which is like shorter bursts of activity, maybe more frequently, because there's never really been that much of a need for us in a natural sense, even when you go back in time, to like run for miles and miles and miles, but at the same time, when it came to, getting away from danger or hunting, there's a need for being able to kind of move very quickly, very fast. And so that's kind of like been my whole philosophy. That's me. That's me. So I hope that if you're somebody who's listening just to kind of see my take on running and whether or not you should do it, hopefully it kind of helps you and you don't necessarily like just kind of see it as law what I've said. But do your own research, listen to your body, make sure whatever you do, whether you decide to run long distance or not, that you are comprehensively taking care of yourself, giving your body good fuel, giving your body good rest, and again, listening to yourself, okay? So hopefully this helps. that'll do it for this episode. Make sure that if you found this podcast helpful, that you share it with somebody, that you like it. Please do the thumbs up to show that you like it. Hit that subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I have new podcasts come out. And don't forget our featured product, What You Can Do About Belly Fat, my book. The description is below, and you'll see the link to buy the book, or just go on Amazon.com and search my name, or search for the title of the book, What You Can Do About Belly Fat, to get your copy. And that's it. Remember, your doctor's not responsible for your health. You are. God bless you.